Hello, welcome if you're new, welcome if you're not, welcome if this is the first time this podcast is gracing your ears. My name is Shannon and welcome back to another episode of Try Not to Need Me. Welcome to what I'm going to call the new season or the new iteration or the new version of this wonderful podcast that served me such a specific purpose for such a long time. And then I got to a point of feeling very much like it was a bit of a chore, and the computer I had at the time did not have the capacity to manage the video and the sound files that I wanted it to. And I just eventually pulled the plug, but I only stopped paying for SoundCloud probably like 6 months ago. So it's kind of annoying that now I'm going to have to start paying for it again to get all my old episodes back and be able to put these on podcast apps as opposed to just YouTube. But they will also be on YouTube. So if you want to watch the video version of these podcasts, please go to my YouTube channel, which I will have linked in the Spotify episodes and in my social media and all of the things. But how the hell have you been? It has been a couple years since I uploaded an episode of this, and I was sitting in the corner here of this lounge, but the room was around a slightly different way. I had just gotten Gucci. I feel like speaking of, she's literally decided that right now is the time that she wants to do a poo, which is great. I think it was 2021. It was very much COVID. It was fairly early into me living here. It was a very different time in my life. It was very different, and a lot has happened. A lot has changed. I have grown a lot. I have learned a lot. My life looks very different than it did back then. I've had a number of jobs, and I've learned a shit ton, and I'm now 28 and living in my late 20s and, enjoying. I guess the last time I did this, I think I was like 25, or maybe I was 26, but that feels like such a different stage of life, even though it was really only a few years ago, and I'm still living here, but I'm about to sign a new lease. So I've been here 3 years now. But anyway, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I have a lot of thoughts, and I have a lot of internal monologues with myself when I'm driving to and from work. And I often think like this would be the perfect time to record a podcast, but obviously I'm driving to and from work and it's really hard to do that at that time. But I just was like, I still have this forum. I have all of the equipment. I know how to do it. And I still have so many like things I want to talk about and share. And I don't necessarily feel like people are going to listen to it. But if you do, great. If you know me, amazing. If you don't know me, hello. But I think I'm going to change the format very slightly. And obviously I based this originally on being an advice podcast. And I'm a person who kind of prides myself on giving fairly good advice to other people. Taking my own advice is a whole other thing. But I have always just been really ready and willing and happy to like throw my 2 cents into a conversation and give my advice to someone, whether it was solicited or not. And obviously it used to be somewhat solicited because it was sent into my anonymous ask box. So clearly somebody needed advice on something. Although a lot of the time I just bullied my friends into giving me submissions, fake or real, because I needed more content. And I think that was also part of why I sort of fell out of love with doing it, is because I felt like nobody needed me, which is great because I say try not to need me. But yeah, and I think now I'm at a point where this is just as much, if not almost completely for me now, because it's such a fun outlet and a fun forum to just like share my thoughts. And I do have multiple forums like that in my life. I am writing multiple books. Not that that's a humble brag. They may never see the light of day. But again, it's a really good outlet for my thoughts and my feelings. And one of them I need to finish in the next couple years. And I do have, a really solid foundation of like family and friends that I can talk to about things. But I just love the idea of having this kind of like endless void that I can rant into, and that if people are choosing to listen, they're choosing to listen and I'm not forcing them to. So that's kind of where this is going to go. I'm going to keep the name. I'm going to change all the artwork. So it's going to look a little bit more fresh on YouTube and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's going to be still very casual, this kind of format, sitting on my couch in comfy clothes. I was going to wear the One Love Manchester jumper just for the memes, but I was like, no, I have so much Disney merch I could be wearing. I was actually also wearing like the shirt that I wore to work today, and then I was like, no, that feels too formal. I've kept my little gold hoops in, but I've chucked a jumper on, and I do have a laser appointment at some point, so I will need to make sure that I watch the time. The time is 5:58 and it's at 7, so at least it gives me like a hard stop to shut up. My cat is also loitering around, and you guys met her. She's still alive and kicking and thriving. I don't know if you could hear that. At some point I'm hoping she'll just settle, but this is the time of the afternoon where she usually gets a little bit rampant, so I'm just hoping she'll stay in a fairly chill mood. But yeah, I'm just really excited to be back and to be talking your ear off and to be chatting shit. And what I've basically done is collated a whole ton of topics from friends and family and my own thoughts and things that I want to talk about and things that I feel like I have views on and opinions on and experience with, that like whether it's helpful or whether it's just entertaining is up to you. You know, the podcasts I listen to are not ingrained in like anything topic specific. I listen to a couple who talk about totally random shit, and I listen to a group of friends talk about totally random shit, and I think like they're the ones that I like the most because they're just, it's like you're just hanging out with friends and having a conversation and laughing along with them. I do feel like there's a really good dynamic in having multiple people on a podcast, and I would again love to get to a point where I can have friends and talk to friends about specific things who might have really good views on the world. And I see that being something I would love to do in the future. But for now, it's just going to be me on my couch talking shit to you. In times when my boyfriend is not around, and that is a fairly big part of my life now. Hello, darling. I started dating a very sweet man a year and a bit ago, almost. It's not quite a year and a half, somewhere between a year and a half ago, who is I would willingly call the love of my life. Whether or not he watches this and gets creeped out, I don't know. But he is fantastic and I love him so much, and he lives here. So I almost need to time this when like he's not around, purely because I don't want him to feel like he just has to lock himself in a room, although he'd probably love an excuse to play games by himself. So hi. My cat has joined me. I'm sure he would love an excuse to be locked in a room and playing games, but I don't want him to feel like he has to do that. So I will probably try and find times to do this when kind of suits. Also, I don't want to put any pressure on like a frequency of upload for this. It might be once every fortnight. It might be once a week. It might be once a month. It might simply be when inspiration strikes and I feel like recording an episode. I don't want to like put a really hard boundary on it, because I feel like that's when I get very like, if I'm not doing it properly, then why am I bothering to do it? But I have to keep reminding myself that I'm doing this because I like it and I find it fun. And that's that. So all of that to say, and my life update over, I guess I haven't really given you a life update. I still live here. I'm 28. I live here with my partner and my cat, Gucci. I am working as a digital marketing manager at a fashion company. I am no longer running a small business. I did a musical last year. I just got back from a weekend in Disneyland. I am still an avid traveler and having a good time. I'm now a book girly, so we can talk about books. Fun. I'm currently reading the Mindfucked series by S.T. Abbey, which I think is quite funny because I just realized there's like some stabbing in it, and S.T. Abbey is stabby if you put it together, and I just saw that I read it and I thought it was really clever. But if you are into fairly dark romance / crimey / drama books, I would recommend it. It is very dark. I'm happy I'm kind of able to like close it up and not think about it, even though like I'm thinking about the characters, but I'm trying not to think about like the trauma. If you have any sort of triggers, I would read a list of trigger warnings before delving into it, but it is really quite well written and very enthralling. I'm like hooked. I need to continue reading. But anyway, that's kind of my life update. So I've written down a couple topics that I wanted to talk about in this episode. And it'll likely be very kind of all over the place. But the one I thought I would start with, since I mentioned it just before, was moving in with a partner, or moving in with a partner for the first time. So for anybody who doesn't know me personally and hasn't watched any previous episodes of this podcast, I had previously never been in a relationship. So the relationship I'm in now is my first proper, not even adult, but like proper adult relationship. I had never been anybody's girlfriend. I had dated people, I had slept around, but I'd never been someone's girlfriend. That's not something that I had in my life. And this kind young man came into my life and asked me to be his girlfriend. And obviously there was like a courtship process and all the rest of it beforehand. But this is my first proper relationship. And so it's been a really massive learning curve, because I think when you date younger, at least this is my assumption, because again, I never had this experience, but at least of the people in my life who had relationships younger or have been in relationships since they were quite young, it's quite different because you grow up with them and you grow up in that relationship. Whereas I grew up and found myself alone and built, I guess, the personality and the complexities of who I am and my value system and my beliefs and my, the way that I hold myself and the standards that I hold myself to and the standards that I always wanted a partner to be held to. I developed that all on my own and all without real input from a partner or without, I guess, real experience of like being in a partnership. And that is very hard to then bring to a table when you've been so used to being alone for so long and so used to being able to be kind of like a sole trader of sorts and like a lone operator. And, you have family and you have friends and you have people that you lean on, but you are doing life alone. And that's what I was so used to. And having to learn how to let someone into that, having to learn how to both be independent and codependent almost at the same time. And I know that those are quite, very broad ends of the spectrum of dependency, but realizing that like it's okay to rely on this person for emotional stability, for support, for fulfillment in so many areas, but it's so important to remain your own person and have your own hobbies. And he was really clear when we started dating. He was quite forward about the fact that one of the things he found most attractive about me was the fact that I had this really wide spoke of interests in my life. And I had a really wide net of friends. I was close to my family. I was invested in my career. I had a side business. I had hobbies. I liked to travel. Like there was so much else going on that he was just kind of this piece of pie that like slotted really nicely into my existing circle of life. And it wasn't that he was going to become the entire circle, because that's something he didn't want from past experiences. And I've been really cognizant of the friendships I've had in the past where people get into relationships and kind of put everything else on the back burner. And I've been the person to be put on the back burner that I never wanted anyone in my life to feel that way. And though I feel it's a balance that you have to find, it's really not that hard to do. I think you can prioritize this new special part of your life while continuing to prioritize everything else that you have going on. Because there are times when, I'll hang out with my partner at 10 p.m. on a Thursday because we're probably just going to like lie in bed and go to sleep. Whereas I can't hang out with my best friend at 10 p.m. on a Thursday and lie in bed and go to sleep, because that's not the vibe that we have and the relationship that we have. And there'd be very few friends that would be what we do in order to spend quality time together. So there's these really easy ways to fit everybody in and make sure that everybody is getting, you know, really intentional time with you and effort from you and feeling like you are contributing to whatever relationship you have. All that to say, falling in love at 27 was really scary. And it's, you know, it's not often that you get to experience a new emotion in life. You know, we've grown up, we've experienced things, love, loss, guilt, grief, so many things that by the age of, you know, your mid to late 20s, you've kind of gone through a lot of those motions, and it's rare for you to feel a new emotion or a new experience that you haven't kind of been through. And love, romantic love for the first time at 27 was horrifying. And I found myself just like constantly on edge is not the right way to put it, but like constantly heightened by my own emotions. And I was like, I remember this period of my life so specifically. It was kind of like the start of last year, as I was, you know, deepening my connection with him and falling in love and realizing that that's what I was feeling, and realizing that it's just this like all-encompassing emotion that can kind of take over everything else, and it can make you feel really anxious, and it make you feel really giddy, but it can make you feel really angry when they do something that doesn't feel like it aligns with you, and it just heightens every other emotion that you feel like you have such a handle on and you almost don't, and you go back to this childlike state of not being able to regulate yourself and feeling so out of control of everything. And that's how it felt. And you kind of go through this like big crescendo of that emotion, and then you come down and you settle and you go, oh, okay, like this is fine, and I'm allowed to feel this strongly towards this person, but it shouldn't take over my life, and it stops doing that. But going through that for the first time was really quite scary, and so rewarding. You know, obviously having a person to call, you know, the one that I love is really special, and I'm really grateful that I found that after many years of being in the trudges of dating. But it's been a real learning curve. And I think as well, a lot of the people in my life have been in relationships for many years and sort of started relationships when we were a lot younger, either in our late teens or early 20s. So they've kind of had this very different experience, whereas I don't have a lot of friends in my life who are with partners that they've met sort of in their late 20s or even later in life. So it was, I didn't have a point of comparison, and it's something that I definitely look for in a lot of facets of my life, is a point of comparison. And not to say that I need to compare myself to people in a very intentional, specific way where I need to compare and like be better or be like, why am I not like this or anything like that. But it was more like, is this normal? And I feel like we're very intrinsically built to want to feel like what we're doing and what we're feeling and what we're experiencing is normal. But it's really hard to, you know, draw conclusions about that when you don't have something to compare it to. So I guess my computer has just gone to sleep, but I don't know if that means it stops recording. One sec. Sorry, just had to make sure my computer was still recording. Anyway, point of comparison was really hard. So when it came to the back end of last year and we'd been together almost a year, and I'm such a date person. Like, I love being like, oh, a year ago today I was doing this, and it's been exactly 400 days since I did this. Like, I just like measuring time that way. And it was almost a year, and we'd started talking about it. He was basically staying at my place 5 nights a week because it was a lot closer to his work. But I wasn't getting to spend really good time with him on weekends because he would go home to see his brother. That's where his computer was. And, you know, one of his major hobbies is gaming. And then I felt like weekends weren't, like, we didn't get to have weekends together, even though that's the time you almost want to spend with someone like that, because It's work-free, stress-free time when you get to just kind of like calm down and do fun things and whatever. So if we didn't have plans, we didn't see each other, and I didn't like that. And we eventually came to a decision. It was a journey, and it was something we both learned from, that you shouldn't make assumptions that the person is thinking the same thing as you. And we eventually got to a point where we agreed it made the most sense for our relationship. It made the most sense for us financially. It made the most sense for us from like a location and a commute point of view, that he would move in. So he moved in the back end of November. And then I went away for a month at the end of the year anyway. So I was like, if we're going to do it, we should do it before I leave so that you're settled, and then the place is, yours for a month, and you can look after Gucci and do whatever you like. So that happened. But before it happened, I was certainly really on the fence, and I was really stressed about it. And I spoke to a lot of people, and they all kind of said, like, what's the real reason that you feel this is not the right thing to do? And I couldn't come up with a genuine justification for a reason that it wasn't right for us. The only thing I could actually ration with myself is that I was concerned about other people's perception of time, and that they would think we were moving too quickly. And I, though, have come a long way in how other people perceive me, and being okay with, not everybody liking me, and being okay with people disagreeing with my values and the way that I choose to do things. There are certain things that I am still very caught up on, and perception of my relationship, I've learned, is one of them. And the people I spoke to my mum and my sister, and I spoke to my best friend, and they were kind of like, but who is it exactly that you think is going to judge you? Because all the people in your life who are important are only going to be happy for you if this is what you want. And my mum was a bit like, I'm traditional enough to think that you shouldn't move in with people that you're not engaged or married to, but I also understand economically that doesn't always make sense in this day and age. And it's a good financial decision for you to be splitting your living costs so that you can, make longer term investments in your future. So I didn't have a good reason. I didn't have a real reason to be actually hesitant on why it should or shouldn't happen. But it took me a long time to be okay with, and I say a long time, it was probably like 2 weeks. But it took me a hot minute to process. I had to process my own emotions. I had to process my own reaction. I had to process the perceived idea of other people's judgment, and that took a little bit of time. And I was really open with my partner in saying, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I think is going to happen. This is what my hesitation is. I know it's not real, but it's irrational and it's anxiety driven, and I can't change the way my brain thinks, but this is where I'm at. And he was really understanding and really compassionate in saying, like, that's valid and that's okay, but like at the end of the day, we're going to make a decision that's right for us. And that's exactly what we did. And so he moved in. And then I guess the second facet of moving in with a partner for the first time, or moving in with a partner full stop, is getting used to each other's way of living. And we have very different habits when it comes to the way we keep a space, the way we tidy and clean things, upkeep and household chores and all that kind of jazz. And I had lived alone, like fully alone, obviously, for like, I'd lived with Sayed, my best friend, for a year, and Sayed's a very clean person. So I was the messy one in that relationship. And then I'd lived alone, 2 years at this point, 2.5 years at this point, by myself, and I'd learnt that no one's going to pick up after you, and it is so much easier to do little things every day to keep a place tidy and clean than having to do a massive clean every week. And so that's kind of how I kept a house, because I liked that at any given moment, if someone popped by, they could be like, your house is so tidy. And I really liked that. It wasn't always clean, but it was tidy. Vacuuming has always been an issue, but now I have a RoboVac, so all is well. But it is still a work in progress. It's April, So it's been almost 6 months that he's been living here, and it is still a work in progress. I am constantly battling with my want for things to be perfect, but also not wanting to pick up after someone else, and wanting him to know where I'm at and what I need, and also being conscious that not everything is going to be done on the timeline that I want it to be done on, and that's also okay. But finding that balance has been really tricky, and I think will continue to be really tricky. And it is all about compromise. It is all about communication. I can be really abrasive at times when I will make snide comments to him about things not being done, and I understand that that's not the most graceful way to go about things, but I am working on that, just as I know he is working on meeting me where I need him to, in terms of, you know, doing jobs I've asked him to do kind of in a general time frame of when they should be done. And him also understanding that something that would mean the world to me is the initiative of doing something before I even think about it needing to be done. So there's work to be done on both our parts, and it is, you know, it's a partnership. It is teamwork. It has to be a collaborative effort. Not one person can't take full accountability for the way that a space is kept. And nobody likes doing housework. Nobody likes it. Can I justify paying a cleaning person? No. And also, a cleaning person isn't going to come every day and put your dishes away. That's not how they work. There's still going to be a level of like individual household input and contribution that needs to be made, basically. So my advice is, if anyone was even asking for it, that like communication and collaboration really is the key, and compromise is really important. I know there are people in my life who are less willing to compromise on that and say, well, like, this is how it is and how it needs to be, and if you can't meet me there, then like we have a problem. I don't necessarily know if that's my approach. My partner is not an abrasive person. I'm the abrasive one in the relationship. I can be very blunt and direct. He is not like that at all. He's very kind and gracious and doesn't take things too seriously. And so he is very, very welcoming of my tone at times, even when I try not to make it pointed. And he'll just kind of kick me in line and be like, that's rude. Don't be like that. And that's what I need sometimes. So, we work together. It is a work in progress. I think it'll be a work in progress for an extended period of time. When you're brought up a certain way, or you've lived for a certain way for as long as you have, there are habits you have to build or form, and that takes time. And I am getting more okay with the idea of that taking time, and just learning to, I guess, get along with a different way of keeping a house that's okay, and that's still enough to kind of keep me sane, if that makes any sense. I need to move on. I feel like I'm only going to be able to talk about one other thing this episode, which is totally fine. So I'm going to talk about, I feel like that is a big topic, so we're not going to get there. I'm going to go with finding work-life balance. Finding work-life balance can be really difficult, pending the kind of role you're in, the kind of company you work for, and what kind of job you have. If I speak of my own experience, the companies I've had the best work-life balance are the ones that encourage it. And the job I was at that I didn't love, I didn't have work-life balance, and a lot of that came down to the fact that I was in the office for 6 weeks, and then we went into that full lockdown, and I found it really hard to switch off because e-com doesn't actually stop. Customers are still shopping on the website all the time. There are still promos that have to go live. There are products on the site. There are things that break. It doesn't really sleep, and so neither do you. And I just couldn't build a healthy boundary between work and life. And a lot of that was also because my manager didn't have boundaries. She worked many hours, out of hours, excessive amounts of hours. And then I felt like I had to do the same. Not that she ever told me I had to, but there's like a level of, do what I do kind of rub off. That doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean? And so I just didn't have a ton of work-life balance there. Then when I went to the agency, I had a lot of it because, again, the job wasn't particularly demanding. And even when there were days when I worked late, I was at home, so it didn't really matter. And I was able to like switch off. The only problem was if a site broke, and the problem is that I couldn't fix it. I had to ask someone else to fix it. But the people that needed it to be fixed had direct access to them as well. So like what really was I going to be able to do that they couldn't, And that was kind of hard. And then in my current role, I am trying really hard to find new balance. I shifted my hours slightly because I wanted to prioritize going to the gym in the afternoon at a time that suited me better than like if I was leaving the office at like 5:30 or 6. The last thing I wanted to do was go to the gym at 7. So if I tried to leave the office between 4 and 5, the likelihood of me going to the gym is much higher. However, I've not really been leaving between 4 and 5 because I've had a lot on my plate. So again, trying to refine that balance. And I've had a lot of early morning calls, and now because I'm getting up earlier, I need to try and go to bed earlier at night, so I don't have a ton of like quality time to spend with my partner. So it's hard to find. I think when you settle into a new role or a new job or a new company, it takes time, and you kind of have to be willing to give that 100% and give up a little bit of the flexibility that you want to figure out to gauge the boundary that other people have and gauge the balance that is actually offered to you. I work from home twice a week, which I really like because I know that those days I can just head down for like 8 hours and get stuff done. And then the time after work really is my time. I don't have to commute. But I also like being in an office now a couple days a week because I like the collaboration. I like being able to go to someone's desk and have a conversation with them and get things done. The balance is so perfect. I think everybody should have both. Obviously there are introverts who don't like that, and that is also fine. I think then work for a remote company. Personally, the balance works for me. I like having the opportunity to not put real clothes on and be at home and just like head down and get things done, and also have a load of washing on at the same time. That's really convenient and really good and helps me make the most of my weekends as well. But then I like that I'm able to schedule meetings in those 3 days when I'm in the office. Meetings are more, I feel like people are more present when you're not behind a screen or your camera's not on. I'm guilty of that. But yeah, I feel like finding balance is so specific. And then there's people who don't get that, like teachers. I know because I'm surrounded by so many of them. It's a lot more difficult for them to find work-life balance when you are often working out of hours. You work when you get home. Some people work on weekends, some don't. I think it depends on, your own work ethic, and if you can find the time to do everything that you need to do during the week. I know that teachers have to do a lot of admin that they can't do while they're on class, so it is hard. It depends on your work, but I think you also have to lead your own priority of your work-life balance. And I actually am starting to prefer the term of work-life harmony. And I heard it in an event the other day, and there are going to be times when work is 85% and everything else is 15%. And there are going to be times when it's 50-50, but you have to be okay with that fluctuating and giving what you need to give to what you need to give to. If you find you're burning yourself out, you need to flick back to a 50-50 or a 60-40 to get back to you and get back to feeling like the best version of you and like you have a handle on things. And that's really hard to do, but I think the best thing is to be really self-aware and really self-conscious of what you are and aren't in control of, and the things you are in control of, take control of them and make sure that you have the flexibility and the ability to set your own boundaries within reason, and make intentional choices to make the most out of the time that you have outside of work. Whether you can change your commute for it to take a little bit less time, whether you can change your hours to go to the gym or prioritize a hobby or an interest that you have outside of work. I know that when I did a musical last year, my manager was really understanding that during show weekends, I needed to work from home, firstly, to avoid all the COVID that was going around. And secondly, just because it was a lot. And she was like, but I love that you're doing this. And I think it's fantastic for you to have an interest that you are able to explore. And like, it's obviously temporary. It's 2 weekends out of a year that you're like, I need to work from home an extra day. Like, it's not going to change things. I know you're still doing your job, but it's just easier for you to get to the theater instead of commuting. And like, she understands that. And she understands that like I'm the kind of person who's still going to deliver the work that I said I was going to. I'm not sitting at home and doing nothing. And I appreciate that. And I think you have to work hard to prove to the people that can make those decisions for you that like you are trustworthy. And if working from home is something that is justified, then it's justified. And some people feel like it has to be justified, some don't. I'm personally not a person who cares if the person that I manage works from home, because I know he's going to deliver his work. So I'm like, if you want to do that from home, do it from home. It makes no odds to me. You'll reply to my team's message, so I don't care if you're here or not. I think it's important for people to have that flexibility, and if you're a company where people can do that, then they should be able to do that. That's all I have time for, because I do need to leave for my laser appointment. But I really appreciate if any of you have stuck around this far and are excited for the new series and iteration of this podcast and me just like talking shit. And I hope that you are doing well. And I would love, if you have any topics at all that you would love to hear me talk about, DM me on Instagram or leave a comment or message me if you know me personally, and I will add it to my ongoing list of things that I want to chat about in this version of Try Not to Need Me. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic morning, evening, night, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.